Welcome to the Words That Change Lives podcast, helping leaders, coaches, and small business owners to 10 times the impact of their message. Join us as we delve into the art of powerful language, enabling you to speak with unwavering honesty, communicate authentically, and create a lasting impression with every word.
I was about 12 years old when I joined the local Dram theatre group and started performing in their pantomimes every year, just in our small local village. And I was in the chorus, so I was singing and dancing and doing all those sorts of things. And one year I got given a solo dance, which was absolutely petrifying. But afterwards, the choreographer said to me, "Helen, you need to find a way of taking up more space on the stage." And this was the first time, I guess, I really started to learn about presence. And as the years went on and I moved into leadership development, so my other version of acting, being able to stand up in front of people, this was also really important. And then when I started helping leaders develop their own talks and I started giving my own talks, it was even more important, because you see, what we say is really, really key and crucial. And this whole podcast is called Words That Change Lives. But the way we're conveying ourselves when we are sharing those words is also really important. It adds another layer to your delivery and the impact that you have. So in this podcast episode, I'm going to go through what presence actually means. I'm going to get you to think about your own presence and what that looks like to you. And then I'm going to give you tips on enhancing your presence. We're going to go through the work of Cuddy. I'm going to give you some daily practices. We're going to go through the work of Julian, and I'm going to help you build presence during any presentation or talk, including things like blocking, which comes from the world of acting. And then I'm going to share some resources with you. So first of all, we have to understand what presence actually means. Well, presence is treating the most difficult interactions as opportunities for you to reveal what you are capable of and to express your worthiness. Now, I think that comes from the book Presence by Cuddy. And I think that's a really big, broad way of talking about it. But really, if we think about it, having presence in any situation, whether you're in a one-to-one meeting, a team meeting, a briefing, a presentation, or standing on a stage, is actually a great skill to have. It's about being in the moment. It's about expressing your true thoughts and feelings. It's about having confidence without arrogance. And also it's about understanding that you can actually trick yourself into feeling more confident by adopting physical presence and, going back to what that choreographer said, taking up space. Because really, if we have the mindset of taking up space, then we will physically take up space. Having a mindset of confident presence enables us to physically have confident presence. But first of all, we need to understand what presence you actually have. Now, there's a presence model. And I used to deliver training on this with Mind Gym. I went through some assessments with Mind Gym, and this model was picked up from them. And it's all about understanding that there are lots of different types of presence. The first is low control presence. Now, low control presence is someone who might be quiet yet purposeful. Now, I like to give an example of this. This is Richard Branson. So whenever, I think I've mentioned him, when I first saw him speaking when I was an employee and I went to his house and he did a talk, he was quiet yet purposeful. He didn't exaggerate his movements. He wasn't loud, he wasn't gregarious, but he delivered that message in a really, really powerful way. Then you have low uncontrolled presence. Now this is where someone might be closing in on themselves, nervous and lacking confidence, shrinking into the space rather than taking up the space. Then we have high uncontrolled presence, which is someone who's very charismatic, but could potentially be overwhelming. Now, I used to have this. I used to gesticulate wildly when I delivered training. And I remember my colleagues through the glass office doors taking the mickey out of me one day because my hands were flying everywhere and I was rushing about the place. Michael McIntyre is a good example of high uncontrolled presence. What we want to aim for is high controlled presence. This is where you are calm but deliberate. This is where you are controlled but expressive. You're considered in your movement, in your words, and how you are taking up space. So have a think about that for a minute in terms of where you might be in your delivery right now. Are you low controlled, low uncontrolled, high uncontrolled, or high controlled? Now, I love Amy Cuddy. I follow her still online. She's a beautiful soul. She's experienced many challenges in her life, one being a serious accident. She's also recently had another accident. But her research on presence has been impeccable and something that I always refer back to, and her book on the subject is brilliant. And her TED Talk, which I'll link in the show notes, is still one of my favourites in talking about presence. Now, one of the things that helped me when I delivered my TEDx talk at the Brighton Dome was adopting Amy Cuddy's research. I stood backstage at the Brighton Dome and did the Wonder Woman pose. Now, the Wonder Woman pose is where you stand up straight with your hands on your hips, facing forward. And this is where we adopt this physiology of confidence to trick our body into feeling confident. Now, Amy Cuddy calls this fake it till you make it. Now, I know a lot of people don't like that term, but in terms of this particular area of presence, I believe it. Another example of this, which I may have shared before, is the All Blacks team and the haka. When they do that ritual dance before a game, they are not necessarily doing it to intimidate their opponent. They are doing it to feel confident in themselves. And this is why if we adopt a Wonder Woman pose, or there's the champion pose where you're putting your hands straight up, you are tricking your body into believing that you're confident, and so confidence follows. It's very grounding. It helps to calm you down. And it really does work. I am testament to this. I do it every time before I deliver any type of training, in person or online, and it really does work. And what I will say about presence is it's not necessarily something just to do before a presentation or a talk or anything where you're going into a situation like that. I recommend doing it daily, because you can actually build presence as a person so that you can be in any situation, a networking event, a meeting, a one-to-one conversation, and feel that sense of presence. So, for example, you could get out of bed every day and do a Wonder Woman pose and practice expansive body language in private spaces, like when you're brushing your teeth, or when you're doing a daily routine, visualizing confidence, visualizing that end result that you want from giving that talk or presentation or briefing. So getting that into morning rituals or daily rituals, taking up space in your house is actually a really good practice. But also, pre-event rituals for presence are really, really good. So, for example, I always would familiarise myself with a space before giving a talk. I know lots of people do that. They go to the venue, they see where they are so they can imagine themselves within that space, and using the power rituals like the power poses and also affirmations or power words. I use the word power for mine. I know it's pretty obvious, but it really helps me. And tonal exercises, which I'm going to talk about now. The work of Julian in this area is huge. He's done 2 TED Talks on this particular topic, and he really talks about the power of vocal communication and how that can build your presence. So we've got things like the tone and the way you're using your words, the way you're delivering your words that can build presence. I'll give you an example. When you're delivering a talk or presentation, you don't want it to all be the same level. You don't want it to all be the same pace. And you want to vary it depending on what you're talking about. So the first is register. And this is where we speak higher or lower. And lower tones are for authority. So when we speak at a lower tone, we're maybe emphasizing a point for authority. And when we're speaking in a higher tone, we might be emphasizing something for excitement or punctuation in what we're saying. We also have prosody, so varied intonation, making sure that we are varying the way that we're intonating words, and that also includes pace. So you might want to speak quickly if you're emphasizing a story or you're coming to a crescendo, and then you might want to talk slower if you're reflecting on something, you're looking back on something, or we're wanting to contemplate. Silence is also incredibly important. Now, I was coaching someone recently, and the pause is very powerful, but too long a pause can sound like you don't know what you're going to say next. Too short a pause can sound like you're rushing. And I will say that pausing and the power of pausing really comes with practice, because it's just a fraction of a second more feels different to the exact amount of time to pause. Pausing enables you to think about, on the audience to think about, what you said and reflect on it themselves. And then we have pitch and volume, adjusting it based on the message and the audience engagement. Sometimes you need to get louder, and sometimes you need to be quiet. So I recommend looking at his warm-up exercises. He takes you through a series of them. I'm going to link in the show notes, but he talks about things like the deep breaths and the sighs and the lip trills, which is the brrr, and the sirens and the rolling R sounds and things like la 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 la. I'm not going to go through them all now, but Julian Treasure is an absolute expert in this. And I also want to talk about how you can maintain presence in your talk, because this is where I guess the magic really happens. This is where we're working on taking up space. So standing straight and tall, I know it sounds so obvious, but it really does convey confidence and openness. It helps to reiterate that physiology, and it really helps you to feel more confident. Shoulders back and arms open is way better than shoulders in and arms folded or arms closing in. So using open gestures rather than defensive gestures is going to help you have that high controlled presence rather than that low uncontrolled presence. Breathing slowly and deeply throughout will always help you maintain calm and control. And feeling solid and grounded enables you to stand firm when you're making key points. And feeling solid and grounded helps you to stand firm when making key points. This is really good to help avoiding that caged tiger pacing that a lot of people do when they're not conscious of how they're using their body and how they're using their presence. Another really good thing you can do is use purposeful movements like blocking to enhance your delivery. So you can plan where you're going to stand and how you're going to move for different parts of the talk. Another thing you can do is move with your story. So that's using purposeful movements like blocking to enhance your delivery. So for example, we've got positioning where you're planning your stance and movements for different parts of the talk. You could be standing stage left for one part. You could be standing in the middle for another part. You could be standing stage right for another part. And using transition steps, so movement to signify transitions or changes in topic between those places, really, really is powerful. Then when you want to engage with the audience, you can move closer to them or step back as needed to change focus. And you can use physical movement like your hand gestures and visual elements. You could be using visual imagery with your hands to act as visual aids. If there's a table or a chair, you could put your hand on that to help you maintain stability and relaxed demeanor. If you are holding a laser pointer, this can actually keep you occupied and your body language open. So I recommend when you're thinking about blocking to plan movements ahead of time to avoid aimless pacing, Balance movement with intentional stillness to emphasize key points, and ensure your movements are natural and integrated into your speaking style rather than I'm over here and now I'm over here. So in a nutshell, those are some practical tips on how to increase your presence. And I really recommend practicing these daily. Maybe record yourselves observing your body language and voice. It's the best way to see how you come across. I encourage that with all of my clients, and in fact, it's part of the process of our work together that they do that. And finally, look at Amy Cuddy's work, the book Presence, and look at her TED Talk, which is called Your Body Language May Shape Who You Are. And Julian Treasure's talk is How to Speak So That People Want to Listen. I will put those in the show notes, and I will look forward to speaking to you next time. Toodaloo!
Thanks for listening to Words That Change Lives. Please rate, review and follow on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It really means the world and helps me to reach more people so that we can all harness the power of our words and change lives for the better.